watching Force 13's live streaming service. This edition of Force 13 Live takes us to the southwest Indian Ocean, which we are looking at Cyclone Cilida, which is intensifying rapidly. It has been doing all day today. We have been keeping eyes on it. Its intensification phase is still ongoing, and you've seen what it's been doing in those last few hours. Things are hotting up in this part of the world, and this storm is expected to intensify further through the next few days, and Class 1 warnings are in effect for a large part of Mauritius, indeed the whole of the main island of Mauritius under a Class 1 warning. On Réunion there is a pre-cyclone alert as well, and even hurricane force conditions are possible on the islands in the next few days, but mainly a threat to Mauritius, especially to the east of that island. The storm right now, according to the latest information from the JTWC, has winds of 105 miles per hour, that's 170 kilometers per hour, and also according to Meteo France, the pressure is 970 millibars, the ATCF system going slightly lower at 968, not much difference in between the two. You look at its position right now on the screen and you can see how the storm is slowly churning towards the south, the small islands to the south there, of course small in relation to the storm. It's got quite a clear eye, which is becoming clearer as the time goes on. About 471 miles from Port Louis in Mauritius, a little bit further to Réunion, and we expect that the storm will take a little bit of a westward curve possibly before moving back towards the southeast. It really depends on how much that curve is going to happen. Some models taking it on a greater curve to the west than others, some of the models taking the storm directly to the south, which would mean the storm would pass possibly harmlessly to the east of Mauritius. That is still not really sure that's the consensus anymore. It is to say tropical storm force winds quite possible on the islands now, but hurricane force winds maybe not so as the storm passes to the east. We're still expecting it to do so. None of the models at this time are saying that the storm will make a direct landfall or indeed pass to the west. I'm here with you for an hour today, a little bit short notice on the scheduling there, but I'm here now for an hour to take any questions that you have and of course discuss this storm with you as we go through. And also I believe we're going to be having another update on the storm tonight UTC, but it will be in the morning Mauritius time at about 6 AM, and then we expect there will be a lot of coverage on Friday. Let's see if we can invite anyone right now, because we're hoping to have some people involved. Maybe, maybe not. It's a quiet time over there on the US East Coast where a lot of our members are, but I believe we are joined right now by Max. Are you there? I don't know. I don't hear a thing. We'll see if we can get him on the line shortly. In any case, let's see what questions you've got, because I've seen a few going by. Well, just people saying hello actually and talking about cyclones. The 2018 East Pacific season animation, that's coming up tomorrow night, but as it stands right now we will be devoting a lot of our attention onto this cyclone, which is a category 2 on the Saffir-Simpson scale. I'm not sure if I faded up the right dial before, so let me try again. Max, are you there? Nope, still not getting any output from that. So we'll see how that goes. Technical difficulties here and there. Curious that we're talking about what's going on at the minute. 3 storms away from the record in terms of worldwide activity in 2018. So it could well be one for the books worldwide this year. It's currently in 4th place. We were looking at those statistics last night. Let's just, you see, I'm rather unprepared for what's going on here. Let's see if we can take a look now at the latest HWRF model run. This is a model run from earlier today at 6 AM UTC, showing what it expected of the storm in the next few days. Now, there's no guarantee that this is actually going to happen, but it's half of the way there already, considering it's at Category 2 now. HWRF earlier today was predicting a Category 3, strong Category 3. That is now, coincidentally, what the Joint Typhoon Warning Center is going with. And difficult to see on that particular graphic, but it takes it very close indeed to Mauritius. I just want to show you a different graphic that might show that a little bit better. The simulated radar. Now, this isn't real, even though it might look convincing. This is simulated radar imagery of what to expect from the storm in the next few days. So this is how it began at 6 AM, and now we're looking at let's see here, if we go back a frame, that is pretty much what it expected for this point in time. Now let's look at tomorrow. So this is the 21st, Friday. The storm there depicted as being only a Category 2 on the HWRF, so it's already doing better than its expectations. And then to Category 3 by, this must be early hours of Saturday now, and you can see the islands drawing nearer, the storm drawing near to them. And you can see there it just misses out on the bulk of the eye wall there as it moves off towards the southeast. That was one of the HWRF runs. I think an earlier run had something worse than that, maybe slightly. But if we look at a few of the models put up together there, a lot of the model sites are down today as well, so that really helps our case a lot. You can see all of them here, well, a few of them, some selected models from the HWRF. So the HWRF in the purple line, the GFS model there in the blue line, calling for Category 2. Obviously it's reached that already. The orange line you might be able to make out there, that's the COTC model, one of the Navy's models, I believe. The NavGem is also the Navy model there, the turquoise colour. And the red line there was the JTWC's forecast of the storm. Now, if I can find the right page, I should be able to show you the JTWC forecast, maybe not. Alright, well, failing that, oh, I believe that's, is that Max? Hello? Okay, maybe not, I heard a voice somewhere. Let's take a look now at the Réunion forecast. Hopefully we've got it here. Yes, there it is. That's what Météo France are saying about the storm. They're predicting it to become stronger. I forget what all of those colorings mean, so I'm going to have to look it up myself. Intense tropical cyclone they're expecting from it. Now, that is the intensity that Kinanga reached earlier in the last few days. Curiously, I'm now out of focus. The decoration's getting in the way, but you don't need to see me. And then beyond Mauritius, the storm begins to weaken, as you'd expect, as it goes towards the extratropical zone. But we're really concerned about that period of time as we go through into Saturday. Friday night into Saturday is probably going to be the main time that we're going to be looking at this storm. Its effects on land as it passes just to the east of Mauritius. Now, they put out a cone there as well in the yellow shaded zone. Mauritius just on the very edge of that cone. Now, don't forget, the center of the storm could pass anywhere within that cone, so certainly doesn't mean that Mauritius is out of the woods at all. My hunch is that the storm will pass a little bit too far to the east for hurricane conditions on the island.
Hello?
But that could change. Hello?
Hello?
Hello, we've got you now. Hi, how are you?
I'm good.
We're monitoring Cyclone Cilida. I'm guessing you've not been awake long over there on the US East Coast. What are your thoughts of it this morning? I thought it was quite remarkable to see how much it's intensified overnight. Hello? Okay, well, I guess I'll do my own monologue. Let's see if we can take a look at some different versions of the satellite imagery. Here's another version that might help.
Oh,
Yes, we're trying again. What's going on over there? Have we got signal difficulties?
I have no clue. My computer
Yeah,
and Discord even worse for me.
wonderful. What do you think of... Oh, I was going to call it Alcide then. No, that was the first name this season. Cilida, what do you think of the storm this morning?
I don't know. You said it's remarkable how much it's intensified. How strong is it?
It's now Category 2 and intensifying still.
Wow, I wasn't expecting it to be that strong by today.
Certainly intensifying quicker than a lot of the models were saying. For its track, it doesn't really mean much. Not much is going to change unless it deviates further towards the west. Let's see if we can now get some visible imagery on the storm. Of course, it's just gone dark over there, but we can see some visible imagery from earlier today. There was the eye popping out, starting to develop. I have to excuse the choppy imagery there. If you've got any questions for us, start your message with Force 13 all in text. It will light up big and bright for me in a nice little button kind of thing, highlighted even. And I'll be able to see to any and all of your questions. I know that a lot of pertinent questions that get asked about this storm is rainfall expectations. Well, it could be anywhere really from 200 to 600 millimeters of rain falling in parts of Mauritius. That has been quoted by some of the models so far, up to and possibly exceeding 600 millimeters in isolated locations on Mauritius. That's about 25 inches. As long as I've done my arithmetic correctly. Just in case you were curious, if we just scroll a bit further to the east, you will see the other storm in the Indian Ocean. There is Cyclone Cilida. That was a Category 4 yesterday. That's now down to a Category 2 and weakening. That one is on its way out. It's actually stalling over the Indian Ocean at this time. And it may have an effect on the track of Salida, but I doubt it's going to make much of a difference there. And as we pan back over to the west, let's just see if we could get any close-ups of Salida from earlier today. Imagery quality not perfect, but you can see the tiny little smudge on the screen there towards the northern side of the northwestern side of the storm there. That's Agalega. And as you move further towards the south there, I don't think it has St. Brandon on the outlines. In fact, even Mauritius isn't on the outline on here. You can see Mauritius near the very bottom there. The outer bands of the storm, the very peripheral bands just about to reach the Masserine Islands. Let's now see if we can look at some water vapor imagery and zoom back out again and get a wider shot once more. Now the water vapor imagery is used to find out whether there's any dry air intrusion, whether there's any problems out there facing the storm. You can see to the southwest some yellows and oranges there. That's some significantly drier air, not a storm's best friend. And to the east and to the north, a moist environment. Also a dry pocket in between those two storms as well. Cilida is certainly larger. Salida is not a particularly large storm given what we usually expect from hurricane equivalent cyclones, but it is certainly enough to pack a punch. Category 2, both of these storms. If you've just joined us, that is the latest. Of course, the storm may well be passing at Category 4 intensity if it does continue to intensify, and I believe that is now being predicted by the Joint Typhoon Warning Center. Here's another infrared view. And this is the view that we use mainly to discern how well the eye and the eye wall is presented. And you can see those latest frames there. Now in this part of the world, satellite imagery is harder to come by, unfortunately, so that means that the imagery here, the latest image, is just over an hour old, and we're looking back through the day really here. And you'll have to pardon the glitchiness of it. But you can see how the eye has been coming out in those last few frames. Looks to have been growing a little bit, a significant eye wall. The eye has still got a lot more clearing out to do yet. It's still pretty shallow, and that's why it's probably a safe estimate to still have it at category 2 status. Okay, let's see if we've got some questions. I know there's at least one, so let's see what we can take here. Let's see. Will a cyclone impact India? Well, there may be something up there. I've heard rumblings from people. I haven't actually seen it for myself yet, so let's see if we can take a look at what's going on up there. There is the West Pacific Invest 95W that formed earlier, and that may well lead on to something in the Bay of Bengal later on. But I'll come back to that whilst I take the next question. What is the wind speed expected when the cyclone is at its nearest point? I assume to Mauritius. Well, yes. When it does reach its nearest point to Mauritius, it's likely to be a category 3 or a category 4 by the time it gets there. But we expect its nearest point will be, I mean, we're still not sure yet, but we think it's going to be just far enough away for it not to be hurricane conditions by the time it reaches Mauritius. But we have to remain vigilant. Things could change. The storm track could deviate further west, and we could be looking at significant impacts. Time will tell. There's still about 2 days before it impacts Mauritius, at least in its full force. It may well start impacting Mauritius tomorrow, with the first rains and the wind gusts starting to get up, no doubt. But it will probably be a full-blown storm by late Friday night into the early hours of Saturday. Of course, it could go a little bit slower than that, and it may be later on Saturday that we see the effects. Needless to say, if you're on Mauritius, especially the further east that you are, definitely prepare for this, because it could be a really significant storm, not in terms of wind speed alone, but also in terms of its rainfall. Rainfall amounts could reach 600 millimeters, which has been quoted by some of the models so far, and that is obviously a lot, and that could set a lot of places that are prone to flooding and landslides over the edge once again. Now we're looking on the world view here, and you can see in the Indian Ocean there, there is a system just off the coast of Sri Lanka. Doesn't look to be getting its act together, and it looks to me as though it's going to move into Sri Lanka, and probably not much will come of it unless it does something on the Arabian Sea side. And further towards the east there is 95W, which is also on our panel on the left hand side every so often. I must say, the whole West Pacific picture looks like an absolute mess, with convective bursts going on everywhere, looking very monsoonal, and very little going on there in terms of actual tropical cyclone development. If you're curious about Australia, I think that's the remnants of Owen down there still going. Hardly anything left of that. I think I was looking in the right place. Oh, let's come back to the point of interest that we're looking at whilst this clunky page keeps going. We're trying to get... Okay, let's see if we can get back to the first view that we showed you today, showing the cyclone in the... Okay, so this is the kind of image that I'll be showing the most whilst we're tracking this storm, once it loads completely, because it is the type of imagery that updates the most frequently. What you're looking at here is not necessarily what's going on, but what the satellite is indicating in terms of rainfall. So they are almost real-time satellite estimates of how much rain is falling inside the storm. Now, it's not as good, obviously, as an actual estimate on the ground. It's only depicted by satellites based on how high the cloud tops are, corresponding to the amount of density inside the clouds and how much rainfall is falling. So you can see there, I can't remember what the legend corresponds to, just looking at it at the bottom of my screen here. So you're seeing the green area wrapping around the eye wall there. That corresponds to 5 millimeters of rain per hour. So any of those green areas that you're seeing there corresponds to 5 millimeters of rain per hour. It goes into the yellows, that's just above 10 millimeters, sorry. Into orange, 20 millimeters. Red, when you get the solid red after the pink, it's 40 millimeters. And then you've got purple after that, which is in the most ferocious parts of the storm right now. That's about 45 millimeters per hour in those very isolated locations, obviously very far away from any land at the minute. There's Mauritius and Réunion down there, and you can see very little rain falling there at the minute. There are some bands that haven't quite made it there yet, but it looks like they're fizzling out before they get there. The main course is still quite far away and probably won't be felt until the later part of Friday. Let's see here. From North Mauritius, would you recommend bringing our boat on shore before Saturday? Yeah, that would sound like a good idea. Winds will get up above tropical storm strength most likely by Saturday, if at the very least tropical storm gusts by then. What else do we have? Given how Kananga has stalled, are they going to orbit each other? Very interesting question. That's not likely. What we do expect will happen is that Kananga will continue to move very slowly. Basically, it's top to the give way sign, and Salida is going to move on with the right of way, to put it into road terms at least. Doesn't have any bearing on what's going on at the minute, but basically Kananga is going to stay very still over the next few days and basically spin itself out. We expect it will turn post-tropical pretty soon without affecting any land areas. Salida is going to keep on its course, generally a southward heading towards Mauritius, likely to move just to the east of Mauritius. Is there a cyclone season that has seen this much activity in December? That's a good question. I've not actually looked up the research. I would imagine that there would be some season, some other time, that might have had more storms. I wonder whether 1997-98 might have had a quicker start than this year. That's certainly one that I was comparing to not so long ago. It certainly had a very early start. Hello?
When do you think weather will start deteriorating on Mauritius? That's a question that came in.
Well, we're looking at the imagery here. I mean, depends what you mean, really. It's looking very settled right now. The storm is slowly going to be drawing nearer. Judging by this imagery, which spans 6 hours. So it's 6 hours from the start to the end of this satellite loop. So how much distance do you think it's made up there? It's still got a long way to go. The main part of the storm won't be felt until Friday night, I would say. But before then,
it says
you might get some squally showers and some gusty winds. But go ahead.
Said where I was looking, it said Saturday was when rain would start there.
I really think it's going to be storm conditions at some point on Saturday, the way it's going.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that's just because the storm is obviously becoming much stronger than they expected it to be. You know, it's outdone what the models have been saying. It's outdone what the forecasts from Meteo France and the Joint Typhoon Warning Center was saying, and they were saying it would be a significant cyclone, but already it is, and it's done so quite a few hours, possibly even a day before it was expected to.
And the models, except for one of them, really seemed to be in agreement that it would peak at Category 3 or 4, or near Mauritius, or
Yes.
just before getting there.
Yes.
Oh, what do you think of that?
Certainly. I think it will. Possibly even sooner. Do you expect the South Indian Ocean to become above average as well, just like the Northern Hemisphere basins? Yes, I do. I expect it because of the oncoming El Nino, which certainly means that the South Pacific should have above average activity. The Indian Ocean appears to be going in the same vein already, and it would appear to me as though we're in for a 2014-15 light. Not as many storms as that season, but still above average, I should think. Now, a lot of messages coming in, so I may miss something. Hopefully I won't. Let's see what we have here. Okay, I'm up to speed. Since we already had 7.9 Dvorak rating this year with you two, do you think we will have another one of them next year? I would say that next year has a good chance, but like any year, I don't think you could say that it's particularly likely more than any other year. Could happen. I don't know what else to say about that, really. So, questions about how many storms have we had this year worldwide. So the current number is now, according to Force 13's research, is at 104 storms around the world this year. The average per year is 91. The record high was set in 2005 when there were 107 storms. The two other years that had more storms than this year so far was 1971, I believe, which had 106 storms, and another year in the 70s as well, which also had 106 storms. And in a moment, I will be able to bring that to you. 1970 and 1971 both had 106 storms each.
What is this, fourth most active year on record worldwide?
So far, yes. 11 days to go. People talking about poetry. I'm not a guy for poetry, I'm afraid, but when David comes along later on tonight, I'm afraid we won't be live by then. I'm sure he could give you something. It won't be for me, I'm afraid. Let's see, what else do we have?
El Nino is not coming together as forecasted since the MJO and DCKW.
Yeah, and that's why I don't think we'll have as much activity as we had in the 2014-15 season, because the El Nino won't materialize as much as it did that year. By a long shot. By a long shot. It's going to be a weak El Nino, possibly moderate, but it looks like it's going to be on the weaker side. But it does mean enhanced activity in the Pacific nonetheless. If you've just joined us, this is Force 13 Live on our hour-long live coverage today. Only an hour, I'm afraid, because there's a lot going on elsewhere, at least for me today, so I can't pick up the bat, and I don't know if anyone else will. But I'm here till the end of this hour with the latest updates on the storm. We've got another update coming tonight, tomorrow as it is in Mauritius, 6 AM Mauritius time. We will have a regular storm update for you. And on Friday, during the day, I expect we'll have a lot more updates. We don't know the schedule just yet, but of course it will be on this very same link, Force 13 Live. Now, I don't know if there's been some confusion about our live links. I don't know if someone's done something here and there. But I can tell you that when we are live, if you just type in youtube.com/force13/live, it will always take you to our live stream, and if we are streaming a live event, you will see something. So just to clear up any confusion that may have arisen there, that I may have been alerted to. I don't know if something did happen or not, but we did have a slow start. So, latest imagery. This is the best we've got, really, for this part of the world. You can see the eye continuing to appear in those late frames. Looks to me as though the eye is deepening, the eye wall is strengthening, and I would say in the next few hours we could be looking at Category 3 status on the Saffir-Simpson scale. Currently a Category 2, 470 miles away from Port Louis. That is roughly probably about, I don't want to guess, I'm guessing something like 800 kilometers now. But my kilometer conversion is a little rusty. I know everyone uses kilometers over there though, so I will try to be as accommodating as possible. Its current wind speed 105 miles per hour. That's around 170 kilometers per hour. That is sustained winds. Its pressure is around 970 millibars, 970. Category 2 on the Saffir-Simpson scale, 471 miles from Mauritius. From Port Louis, that is, so a little bit less to Mauritius itself. So still trying to work that out in my head as we go along here. So it would be something like 700 kilometers, I believe. It's neither here nor
What
there.
is the chance that Salida will become a Cat 5?
Pretty low. Conditions aren't good enough for Category 5 status. It would be a surprise if it did get to Category 5. It wouldn't be a surprise if it got to Category 4, though. But I just don't think it will have enough time, and we've seen storms that take paths like these before. Who remembers Carlos in 2017? It was projected to become a really significant storm, and it ended up doing nothing at all. Well, very little. I mean, it sidestepped Mauritius as a weak tropical storm, and then it became a very weak, very brief Category 1 after it had passed the islands. Not saying that will happen in this case, but it may not get as strong as we think. But at the minute it is strengthening substantially. Category 2 going on Category 3, and it is just 2 days from Mauritius.
Yeah, this storm, in my opinion, does seem to be acting a bit more like Pam than Carlos, though I don't think it'll get anywhere near as strong as Pam was.
Nothing like Pam.
It's early intensification, yes, I'd say that.
Alright, I'm just catching up with some questions here. Do you think flights will be affected on Sunday morning in Mauritius? I wouldn't bet on them running on Sunday morning, but if the storm does get through there pretty quickly, they may start up again on Sunday, assuming that they are cancelled in the first place. I assume they will be, given that the storm is going to pass pretty close, but it could deviate completely from its track and miss. But it could deviate a little bit and make a direct hit. So we can't commit to saying what will happen there yet. I'm wondering if the Pacific typhoon season next year will help with the drought in Asia, especially Korea and China. That's curious that there is a drought going on there. That's news to me, because I thought a lot of storms hit that area this year in particular. But the current patterns are favouring more storm activity for that part of the world, China and Korea, much like they did in, I think it was the 17th century. As an aside, there's lots of research behind that. Just trust me on that. Anyway, let's see.
How likely is it for Salida to charge directly at Mauritius?
At the moment, I would give it a pretty low chance.
Hard to say.
If you're talking about a direct hit there, a landfall, Mauritius is a pretty difficult target to hit directly because it is a fairly small island. But the chance of a landfall, 10% at most, probably. Of course, those odds could increase later
storm
on.
condition chances are probably much higher.
Sorry?
Say storm condition chances are probably much higher.
Yeah, I guess we should make some distinctions here to what we mean by our terminology. So, you've got the center of the storm. You can see it there, the eye, right in the middle of the screen there, that's developing. So that is the calm inside the storm. I'm sure a lot of people know that. And then you've got the eye wall that encircles it. That is the worst part of the storm that has the strongest winds. But You've also got a very large gale force wind field around it as well, extending in some directions over 150 kilometers. The worst of the winds there in that eye wall, that only extends about 20-30 kilometers. And then you've got obviously the high waves that can go on for hundreds of kilometers beyond the storm, and of course no one should be venturing out to sea very far, if at all, if you're unaided. But certainly get the boats in by the weekend, by Friday night latest. Things will start to deteriorate during Friday, I should imagine. Just depends really exactly how fast it moves in the next 12 to 24 hours. You're looking at a 6-hour loop there. You can just about see Mauritius on the very bottom of the screen, and how far the storm has travelled in 6 hours. And if someone got a ruler out or something, you could measure along the line and see how if you extrapolate its current movement, how long it would take until it got to Mauritius. But of course it doesn't quite work that way. It is likely to accelerate as it moves further south.
But on that previous question, can you think of any storms that have directly hit Mauritius?
There have been. An actual landfall, though, I am not sure. And I'm unable to get the means to find out right now. But I've got a suspicion about one particular storm that may have made landfall in Mauritius. It is very difficult to make landfall on one of those islands.
What about the wind shear in the area? It's a question from the chat.
That is something I've not looked at, had the time to look at either. There was a landfall on Mauritius in 1980. I thought there was. That's just one example. Viola Claudette, 1979, sorry. Made landfall there. I only know that because I think I animated it earlier this year. Wind shear graphics. I'm all over the place at the moment. Let me just find one of my usual spots to take a look at what it's doing at the moment on my other screen. Alright, so I'm now looking here. So there's a little gap of low wind shear that the storm is entering into right now in between two banks of very high wind shear. So it struggled to begin with, as we know. It took ages to form, but now it's really developing, and it's really got a very good chance in the next, pretty much until it gets to Mauritius, and then wind shear will be going through the roof again. So now is a perfect opportunity for the storm to reach its potential, and unfortunately for those on the islands that may well happen. Wind shear is certainly not stopping it. It is marginal at the minute, but near 20 knots, but given how the storm has been intensifying as it has been recently, I just don't see how that's going to stop it if it hasn't already, because the wind shear is decreasing and not increasing.
That's probably a reason for these forecasts and models saying Cat 3 or Cat 4.
Yeah, of course. We have plenty of other questions from earlier. This is an interesting, unrelated question. Can you tell me which is stronger, Hurricane Andrew or Hurricane Irma? Well, the answer is Hurricane Irma, which reached 180 miles per hour, according to the National Hurricane Center's reanalysis. Andrew reached 175, I think.
According to NHC reanalysis,
yeah, 175 is its first peak.
922 millibars, and Irma's was 914 millibars. So Irma's stronger, whichever way you look at it.
Let's see here. Lots of other things being said. I've really fallen behind, I'm afraid.
Is there a low pressure in the East Pacific?
Is there?
Don't know.
Oh no.
I've not looked at imagery from there in a while.
Alright, everyone's saying hello to me. I hope everyone knows that I did not manage all of the accounts whilst I am live. I've not written a thing in the text box. So some of our other members are saying things, so you might want to address them. Not as me, because it's not me. I'm here. I'll address any questions on the air. Alright, let's
Remember,
see
if
here.
you have a question for us, start it with @Force13.
That's right. So some more interesting questions, even though they are rather unrelated. Estimate on U2. The update video said 896 millibars and 185 miles an hour. And officials say 180 miles per hour, 900 millibars. Now that is a very interesting point. We've discussed it a few times already. Typhoon U2 smashed through the Mariana Islands back in the end of October, I think it was, wasn't it? And that is very curious. Satellite appearance would suggest wind speeds of at least 185 miles an hour, and are it really depends on whether we get any pressure estimates from the islands, but we are still waiting to hear news from any pressure estimates that they got that are interesting, because what we've had so far from the islands are pressures that are much higher than what we would have expected. For instance, when the storm was just 14 miles away from Saipan, the recorded pressure there was at 947 millibars, which is nowhere near consistent for what you'd expect on a sub 900 millibar storm. It would be consistent with a storm of Harvey's strength in the 930s. So there's a massive discrepancy between the satellite observations and the ground observations on U2. Pending further evidence from the ground, we've gone with a satellite estimate of 185 miles an hour and a pressure of 891 millibars, which would make it the strongest storm, the most intense storm this year. So I hope that answers that one.
Overseas territories, probably the most intense storm to ever make landfall on United States soil.
I could, probably is. Probably is.
The official record, I believe, is held by the 1935 Labor Day hurricane.
Alright, some more comments here. Objective T numbers now up to T5.8, which equates to 127 miles an hour. May already be a Category 3. Wouldn't surprise me. I want to see it be a little bit more consistent before we call it a Category 3, but it is certainly looking that way on the latest imagery.
I have some more questions. What do you think Salida could reach in intensity?
Moderate Category 4.
Where is the storm going to make landfall? Well, we discussed that already.
Well, if the storm makes landfall, you know where it's going to be. It's going to be in Mauritius, but it's very
close to Mauritius.
Very unlikely that a storm would make landfall on Mauritius. It has happened before, as I've mentioned, but at the minute, models and estimates, forecasts rather, are taking it further east than Mauritius. Tropical storm force winds likely, hurricane force winds possible on the island. Heavy rain, definitely. Torrential rain could reach up to 600 millimeters, and I would say at least 200 millimeters should be expected.
Back to your thing on YouTube, someone just said, well, Michael had a pressure of 934 millibars, just 2.6 miles away from its eyewall rim. The lowest recorded pressure, if I'm not mistaken, in Michael was 919 millibars, and Force 13's estimate, if I'm not mistaken, is 917. That's not a discrepancy.
I'll have to see exactly what they were talking about, but based on the estimates that we've seen on the islands, not only that, but the estimates on Guam, that the pressure was 994 was the minimum on Guam, which was just about 90 or 100 miles away from the center of the storm. It doesn't add up in the slightest. I think it's three possibilities actually, if I can remember them all. I made this argument once, I've forgotten it, but basically either all of the stations are wrong, they were measuring incorrectly, or the storm was not as strong as we thought it was, is the other possibility. And I can't remember if there was a third possibility or not, but that's by the by. Those are the two main possibilities, the most likely of the possibilities there. People mentioning Hollanda, that was a storm that certainly affected the islands back in 1994. We were comparing Birgitta to that earlier this year. That was still this year, believe it or not. And we're back here again. We just had some more questions there, and they've just flown past me. What winds is Cyclone Salida going to get to, and how much damage do you think you estimate? That is a very speculative question. I think it would be irresponsible for me to suggest how much damage the storm would cause. I can only advise people to take the necessary precautions, especially when it comes to loose objects. You know, boarding up,
for wind speed,
shuttering up.
You said moderate Cat 4, didn't you?
At maximum, but there's no guarantee that's going to happen.
Maximum, that would probably be putting it around 140, 145, but yep. Maximum. And there's no guarantee it'll reach that.
No, not at all. This is just a watching phase, really, but yes, those on the island should be preparing for the potential of hurricane conditions. Class 1 warnings in effect, they'll likely be upgraded significantly. Will these cyclones help any drought-ridden areas? I'm not familiar on where exactly drought is right now, but from what I'm hearing, Mauritius doesn't need a very wet storm at the moment, from what I'm hearing on the ground. Of course, as time goes on, when the storm does start to affect Mauritius, we'll be back with more live coverage Friday and Saturday. So if you do have any reports for us on the ground, if you're in Mauritius, please don't hesitate to get in touch and let us know how things are going over there. But I expect that right now things are extremely calm.
On a scale of 1 to 10, what do you think is the probability of 95W becoming a tropical storm over the next few days?
Maybe a 3. Yeah, a 3. Let's see, what else do we have? People asking me about the most beautiful eye of a storm that I've seen. I'm not sure how to respond to that one. There's some beautiful storm images out there. A lot of them were taken this year. That'll be for another show. What else do we have here? A lot of questions going by. Keep them coming. What is the costliest hurricane in Costa Rica? I don't know, but I imagine Otto's up there.
Probably Nate or Otto.
Could even be Nate now. One of those recent ones, I should imagine.
Yeah.
I'm just going by some of those questions that you have mentioned already. Still talking about the HWRF model simulating a very close impact. Yes, certainly the case. And some observations on Mauritius. It's been hotter than usual today and the sky was super blue. That is something that you often get before and after a hurricane passes through, because it pretty much wipes out all of the prevailing weather in its vicinity. So that's why you often get clear skies and hot, particularly hot weather, because when these storms form, you can sort of see it on the water vapor here. So we're looking at this. See if we can try and get the outline of Mauritius whilst we're doing it. You can just about make out the outlines down there. So you can see those yellow red areas, that's dry air, and as storms form, very often they get compressed against the next frontal system that's moving through from the bottom left, as the case looks to be here, or at least some thunderstorm activity there. Something's going on down there. So you've got that area that's really being compressed there, bringing in some hotter weather, especially if it was that red zone to the south there, in between those two storms that is closing in a little bit. what you're going to see, what you're going to witness here, you can see the leading edge of the storm, really, in terms of its moisture field. The blue areas just about to reach Mauritius. So when that comes in, which looks to only be about 2 or 3 hours from now, you'll probably notice a very significant and abrupt change in the feel of things. It will probably feel a lot more moist, and I imagine, well, more humid, of course, and the temperature will probably go down at least a little bit.
Someone asked, is Hurricane Katrina tied with Harvey as the costliest storm on record?
All kinds of off-the-wall questions going out there today.
Yeah.
But that is what NOAA are saying, yes. But that is adjusted for today's numbers, as far as I'm aware. No, it isn't, is it? No, that.
I think adjusted for inflation, Katrina is a
161
bit more costly than Harvey.
I think they said.
Adjusted, I think they're both tied.
And seas are becoming rough, according to our partners at Meteo et Cyclone Maurice. Of course, when we finish up here, they'll be providing plenty of updates as well as us. You can check out their Facebook page by searching Meteo et Cyclone Maurice, also called Meteo Hub on their Facebook page. I'm sure many people in Mauritius are already aware of them, and they do a fine job as well. That's why we work together, especially when it comes to these southwest Indian Ocean storms. And they're of course invited to join in on our live events as well as the storm draws nearer. We're almost finished here. We are 9 minutes away from finishing up, so I guess we should do a summary of what's going on.
I imagine that.
Yeah, okay, movement is still pretty slow. I don't know exactly what it is right now. It was 4 knots last night. I imagine it's moved a little bit quicker, maybe getting towards 10 kilometers per hour now in its movement. But still not particularly fast. Yeah, so let's just summarize what we're expecting here over the next few days. I know we've not had many images to be able to show you because short staffing, but this is what we expect over the next few days. Let's just take a look at this different view here on Cyclone Cilida. So this again is from the HWRF at the 6 AM run, showing what we expect over the next few days. So the blue areas, the light blue, sorry, the turquoise color there, that's tropical storm winds. The green, just appearing on the screen there, that is hurricane force winds. Will we see any yellow? There's some yellow. That is category 2. But you can see how behind the curve the HWRF model is, because they only expected the storm to reach category 2 status by tomorrow evening. So it's literally a day ahead of the HWRF forecast that has been calling for a category 4. Let's keep going.
I think this model run is slightly lagging behind your voice on the stream.
Is it? I'm not so sure. So then you get the orange colors coming in there. No, it's because you're in here with me. The stream has a delay.
Probably.
The orange colors there that you see, that is category 3. Now, category 3 is very destructive. That is over 180 kilometers per hour. 175, 180 kilometers per hour. Sustained winds in those orange areas. And if you look very carefully, right at the very bottom of the screen there, you can just about make out the outline of Mauritius. So this image here is what time? That is early Saturday morning. So we continue to look here. The HWRF thinks the storm will just miss. In fact, just a tiny bit of Mauritius getting tropical storm force winds there as it passes to the east. And this is the closest point by the looks of things. Yeah, that frame there is the closest point that the storm is to Mauritius, giving tropical storm force winds sustained to the eastern part of the island. Now, checking the date on that, that is Trying to work it out. I can't work it out. Saturday afternoon. Saturday evening, that is. Sorry. Saturday evening is when the storm's going to make its closest approach, according to the HWRF model. Won't be too far wrong, I don't think. But you can see there at its peak, near its peak as it's passing the islands, still a Category 3. If it moves west by 50, 100 miles, then it's going to be a direct hit for Mauritius. It's more likely to move towards the east, but it could still move towards the west. And then there it goes off into the future, dying off out in the open waters. Let's have another look just once more through the simulated satellite imagery. Nope, that's not working. Any of it working?
I think it's the CMC model. I think it's been having quite a bit of initiation errors as of late, as it's keeping the storm very weak, like borderline storm.
Here's some simulated microwave imagery. I just want to point this out because you'll be able to make out both of the storms on this map in question, and you can see the effect that they have on each other. So you saw as Salida moves off towards the south there, you have Kinanga, which pretty much stays in its place and then moves off towards the west. I'm sorry, we're busy here at Force 13 HQ. We get phone calls all the time. I can't turn it off. But there we have it. Not much else to say at this point. There's a lot of the things that could change. We're still yet to see the effects on land. But we will have a lot more for you tomorrow, I imagine. That's how it's looking. So I think we're going to finish up the show here as soon as I can press the right button.
By tomorrow we will have a much better idea of what the storm could do.
We have a decent idea, but it's just, you know, it's a nervous time over there in Mauritius because a small deviation to the west could mean that Mauritius gets significantly affected by the storm. Of course, if you've got any comments or questions for us, you can send us a message on our social mediums. Facebook and Twitter, search Force 13 all in text. You can also get in touch on Skype. The name is Force 13 all in text. All together as one word, Force 13, just like it is here on YouTube. And you can also message me on Discord, which is where our Discord server is as well. Is it linked on our description? The very bottom of our description, you can join our Discord server underneath the video right now. If you have it.
Want to message Nathan directly, it's full 13 extension 9094.
As we see on the end of every video that I put out, pretty much. So thanks very much for joining us. Hope you have a good evening, and we'll be with you again tomorrow. That's all for now. More to come. Next update on this storm will be at 6 AM Mauritius time. Stay tuned for that. We'll have a lot to talk about there as well in the 4 minutes that I've got to condense it all into. Hopefully we'll manage to get through it all. Have a good night, stay safe, and make sure you start those preparations early. Good night.